Welcome to Rain's Cryptids, Myths, and Folklore. I'm your host, Rain. Today, we will be talking about the history of lies with these cryptids, with some extra tidbits. I decided to change my channel up a little. Don't worry, I will still be giving my theories on the cryptids, but I feel we need more. Of course, I would also eventually run out of cryptids to talk about. So let's expand our thinking. Please like and subscribe as well. The history of cryptids have been around for centuries. We have been talking about things that go bump in the night from the beginning of time. So far from what I have seen, a lot of them date back to the 12th century, some even earlier. Of course, that is what we have been told. I mean, truthfully, they could have been around for a lot longer than that. Believing what we are told by so-called officials has become a bad habit in our society. So maybe it's time we start thinking beyond what we are told by those officials. Those awesome stories we are told by our grandparents, especially those that have grown up near forests, swamps, and deserts, and talked about cryptids, are usually something we should pay attention to. We have always been told that it was just made-up stories or pulling our leg. I'm sure we have all heard some variation to "Grandpa was just pulling your leg." Of course, people love knocking people for believing in something that is outside the box. We are called conspiracy theory nuts. Well, from what I have seen, most of them have become true. So let's look at this without the clouds in our eyes. Let's begin with the first national park, which was Yellowstone National Park, 1872, by Ulysses S. Grant. But if you look at the time and the population, it is surprising they felt they needed a sanctuary for wildlife and for such a large area. The total population for the states of Yellowstone is 44,712, and that's only 3 states at the time. In the United States, there are 401 national parks. Most cryptids are spotted in or near most national parks, reserves, preserves, and national forests. It's not to say we don't see them away from those areas, but they are more prominent in those areas, and I believe there is a reason for that. Teddy Roosevelt, when he was president, which was 1901 to 1909, he created 5 of the national parks, 51 reserves, 4 preserves, and 150 national forests. Makes you wonder, since writing his book, he actually wrote about a friend's cryptid sighting. Kind of makes you go, Now let me tell you a story. One of those cryptids is the fawn, or like I would like to think, is also the goat man. It's written in history around 2nd century BC. We are still having sightings today. In the past year or two, he was hiking in eastern Pennsylvania when he encountered a strange smell and feeling. He said if you've ever been in a thunderstorm, there's a smell to it. You could feel the denseness and the humidity in the air. You could feel a storm coming. The only problem was the day he was hiking around was clear skies, bright and sunny, and in March. He said that for a brief amount of time, the air surrounding him from feet to head became filled with static electricity. He felt the hairs on his body stand up. It was one of the strangest sensations he had ever had. It only lasted for maybe 45 seconds. He was about 3.5 miles away from his vehicle when all of these things began to happen around him. I listened to my gut because it was screaming I should turn back. Something was wrong. I wasn't sure what. But I know enough to always trust your gut. I began making my way back. Having to climb down a small ridge, when out of the corner of my eye, I saw it, the goat man, the thing that I'd only ever heard about in stories. I always thought they were just fake stories, but here I was, seeing it in person. And I'll tell you this, laying eyes physically on the sort of being is the closest you'll ever get to physically seeing a demon in real life. Easily 9 to 10 feet tall. This thing was towering, and to me resembled more of a minotaur than it did a goat man, but still had the gruesome demonic look to it. It didn't have any clothes on or an axe, as he had heard. It seemed to be making its way across a large ridge and wasn't paying any mind to me. Had it looked in my direction, it could have easily seen me. I didn't have anywhere to hide, not even a bush. I stuck out like a sore thumb. I am glad it didn't, so it continued off into the woods and was gone. It was going pretty fast-paced. It appeared to be on a mission to get somewhere. That is just one story, and I will probably reference back to this story many times. If you would like to learn more on the Goatman, please check out my video I did on them. I have a few things that bother me and make me curious as well, but I will get to them as they come up in the future. Okay, so we need to speak about these cryptids. They are apex predators, even includes if they were to eat only grass. Although we don't truly know what they eat. Some you can, especially when you pay attention to the many sighting stories. They usually have fast speed and possible other abilities as well. We released wolves in the Yellowstone National Park, and they are apex predators, but now their population grew too big. So the officials have had to knock down the population. Although I don't truly believe it is just them that has grown, but also the cryptid population is growing as well. We released a wolf population and there are cryptids already there, of course. It's going to seem like the wolves are already overpopulating. Growing up, I always found all the myths, legends, and even fairy tales of these cryptids was always too amazing not to be real. Especially since we are still having sightings now, and even the ones that were quite a long time ago are more than likely real. Now, I am not saying all of them are real, but there are more than enough that are. They like to tell us it's all either embellished or a wild imagination, even hallucinations. Well, it takes something wild to be able to create that thought of imagination. It doesn't just appear out of nothing. It only takes one true sighting of a cryptid to spread to get those imagination juices flowing, as we are good at exaggeration as a story spreads. But the very first telling of a story is usually the closest to the truth. Of course, as it spreads, we are told even the original is just the imagination. We need to stop this kind of manipulation of our minds by narrative pushers. But to think that maybe these creatures have always existed, and we might have pushed them away in some form or another. Of course, to most, that is considered stupid. So, does the thought of pretending that they are just fairy tales, and we must trust our government to tell us that they exist or not? I'm sorry, but our history has been tampered with, and we don't truly know the truth. There are way too many sightings of all these cryptids to say they are all made up. And way too many times the high-up officials have lied and hid information from us as well. Look at the fact that the high-up officials admitted that they killed Kennedy after all this time. So I will just leave that thought with you. How do they disappear so fast? Well, I have some theories for that, but for now I will say again that they have not forgotten their way like us. We like to think we are the superior species in the animal kingdom, but are we really, just because we invent things and claim we are? I have seen animals act more kind and even cruel as much as we have. So we need to step off our pedestals and realize we are still naive and have a lot to still learn, especially from the lies have been told. Look at some of the sightings that have those guys in black SUVs. They come in and take over after a sighting has happened. Why would they want them unless those cryptids have abilities we don't? They are too intrigued to not want to try and gain from it or control it and use it to their benefit. I mean, really, when hasn't the high-ups not tried to gain control over something that can benefit them for it? They are definitely not doing it to keep us safe. And if these cryptids do have extra abilities that we don't, the high-ups don't want us to know about it because that would screw up the narrative of us being the superior species, plus a few other reasons. With technology, we are getting more information out about these cryptids every day, but we also have to fight the disinformation at the same time. People don't like the thought that true history tells us that these cryptids are out there and we have never been alone. Also, history used to be thought of as learning about our past, but now I realize if it doesn't fit the narrative, they will change it. So people choose to fear them rather than understand them. We were led to believe they never existed before, and it's just some embellished fairy tales. But what if those fairy tales weren't just some imagination, but embellished so they could be told that the cryptids aren't real, and that we should pay more attention to some parts of them because it is truthful? Maybe even telling us those children's stories were more about giving us fear, so that we as children wouldn't prefer the supernatural than this plain life we have now. Or maybe some of those children's stories could be ways for us to remember that things aren't always what they seem, just with a little extra embellishments. Take a good look at old school children's stories. Most are of some warning, like Little Red Riding Hood and many others. They are made to be scary, but is that being truthful or making sure we see them as evil? Or as in religion listed them as demons? I believe it's done to keep us from knowing the truth, because a lot of them are still just animals and just as smart as we are, but choose to stick with nature. I wonder why. As we humans think we need more than just nature. Of course, when you have been lied to about our history, we end up in our still and concrete boxes, working our lives away for greedy humans. Now, cryptids can sometimes be aggressive. But I find even when they aren't aggressive, people tend to act like they were so lucky the monster didn't kill them. Most are not monsters, they are animals too, but we like to over-dramatize everything. The killer shark, the killer bear, and so on. When actually it's just doing what it's supposed to do in its life. It makes me sad because have you seen the way we are towards each other? We are way worse. Okay, let's talk about cameras and the sort. A lot of people say there is no excuse for you not to pull out your camera when you see one, and I think people need to stop being so judgmental and think about it. When you are face to face with something you were told doesn't exist, your brain is going to go into a type of fight or flight mode. We have been taught to be fearful of things for such a long time that we don't even recognize our own behavior, let alone something we didn't know existed. But why would we, living in our cities of metal and glass? We have been taken away from nature, and it shows. Please also understand, if you see a cryptid in an area and another person sees the same type cryptid near the same area, does not mean it is the only one in existence. More than likely, there are many of them, and you saw one and the other saw another, not the same one. Now let me say, even through history, we have come across many cryptids that aren't friendly, like the Wendigos, rogue werewolves, and even Bigfoot has been aggressive. So I don't want people to think I'm saying invite them over for dinner and get upset at me because he ate Cousin Fred. We do need to err on the side of caution, not fear, but stop acting like they are not real. Also, these things shouldn't be hunted either. Well, it's like any animal. If it attacks you, of course, if you're not in its home turf, or instigating it, please definitely defend yourself. But don't actively hunt it because, as I have already heard, they are pretty good at avoiding you. I really believe that they just want to be left alone and to just live. Well, most do. But of course, you also got cryptids that are pretty scary, like the Wendigo, which I believe is something very dark. I will get into some of the more scarier cryptids later. Nothing is one-sided, and it's time we stop acting like it. Everything must have balance, or we will destroy ourselves. Sorry, I digress sometimes, but the human race needs to calm down a little. Maybe wake up to the fact we have strayed too far from our nature selves. But back to the point of this, we are not alone, but we do have to look between the lines when it comes from anybody official, and they say it is this way and no other way. Humans have been talking about and even drawing cryptids. This includes aliens for centuries. I'm sure probably even longer, but that is another topic. I am not doing this just for the fun of it. If you look at every movie or even TV show, there is always some truth in it. Yes, it's nice to think that they created all these sanctuaries for all the little animals and fishies only, but during a time when it wasn't really necessary yet. Of course, most think it was just forethought. But was it? I sit here talking about these cryptids because I do believe in them, whether they are kind creatures or evil ones. Blinding ourselves doesn't make things go away. Now we do apparently have new ones popping up as well, like there was one that was attached to a goat when its owner found it. And when they got it off the goat, the cryptid moved like it was mist or like some gliding black smoke, but stayed low to the ground and even went into the water as the people tried to chase it. Why are we having these new ones? I am not sure. There are quite a few theories on them and the why, but it is just a little too early to say. I am still looking into them and will give you information on them once I have more myself. This concludes this video of the history of lies on cryptids. Please remember, even if you don't believe that anything is possible, then maybe you should remember you have been given the ability to think freely. Don't waste it. My next one of these will be Lost in the Woods and will be about our national parks, forest areas, and many other areas. Please check out my other videos where I like to give information on these cryptids and some superstitions. Also, check out my ebook, Rain's Mystical Whispers, Diving Deeper into the Werewolf Dogman. My email and the link to my book is below. Thank you. I'm your host, Rain, signing off until next time.